Hello, I'm Dave from Anaal Nathrakh, and you're watching Metal Mad TV. I'm okay, thanks. I'm feeling quite relaxed, a little bit muddy, a little bit tired. We brought the weather with us here. Sorry about that. But no, it's cool. I've been here a couple of times before at this festival, and we've played a few times in this part of France before, and it's always been good. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm optimistic. You know, it should be good fun. It's been good. We don't tour like Motorhead or anything. You know, we don't spend 3 years on the road constantly. It just doesn't feel right for us. But this year we've done quite a lot of stuff. We've been to America, we've been to Japan, we've been to Australia, played a bunch of things in the UK and Europe, and it's all gone pretty well, really. Even the bad stuff has turned out okay. So last week, I said this to some guys in an interview a minute ago. Last week we were at a festival in the Czech Republic called Brutal Assault. And usually in the band, obviously we play with other guys live, but when we're on albums, there's just the two of us. And Mick, the other guy, he's broken his ankle. He couldn't come for the shows, which is really shit. But we got a friend of ours to fill in, and then we were going to Brutal Assault, and the plane was delayed, and we missed our slot at the festival, and so we had to play at like 2 a.m. or something. And it should have been really shit, but it wasn't. It actually went really well, and everyone stuck around to see us. And you know, there are some great photos with this huge crowd because we played after the headliners and everything. It was a bit absurd, and so things like that have still worked out okay. The good bits have been great. The bad bits haven't been quite so bad as you might fear. So we're still alive. So. It's been all right. You do it. There is no choice. There's no second place. There's no failure. You just do it somehow. Find it somewhere. Don't know where, but that's what you've got to do. I remember when I was a little kid, almost. I was at school anyway, and. I think Pantera were touring, and I think it was when they were playing on Vulgar Display of Power. So this is a long time ago. I was at school, and I saw an interview. I was never the world's biggest Pantera fan, but I saw this interview, and there's the singer Phil, and he had a broken leg, and they're at this huge festival because they're big band. And someone said to him, like, what's going on with your leg? Bust it. And it's like, what are you going to do about it? Nothing. Because that's all that you can do. And from then, when I was still at school and I saw, that's what you got to do. It's okay, you got a broken leg. Whatever. No one cares. Get on with it,
Be strong.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, as it happens, our guitarist, he's got a broken ankle. That meant he couldn't get on a plane, so he couldn't be here. But other than that, just deal with it, We're almost at the point where we can listen to it. Which is, because the thing is, when we make an album, we do everything. We do all of the production. We do everything. It was kind of funny when we signed for the last few albums. We've been on Metal Blade Records, and when we first signed to them, they sent us this document they call the Book of the Blade, and it's like this is what we expect. This is what we will do for you. This is just that kind of getting to know Yeah, exactly. So you're on the same page. You understand where you are, and it says, okay, we're going to need audio at this point. We need you to enter the studio on an agreed date, and then thereafter we do. And then eventually, once the producer gives us the music, then we need time for artwork. And we went, oh, yeah, lovely. Okay, there's everything. Because we do everything. We record it, we produce it, we do the artwork, we do everything ourselves.
Is that important for you to do everything by yourself?
Yeah. I mean, we the reason we do it is because that's what it feels right to do. But I think if we had to do it a different way, if we had to, because like most bands, it's an outside producer who makes it. It's probably an outside cover artist. It's all, all of this. And I don't know how happy we would be doing things that way, because we like control.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose in a way it's kind of pathetic, but at the same time, we like to feel in control of what we're doing. Yeah, and that we're good enough at what we do without like blowing a trumpet, but we're good enough at what we do that we can be happy with the results of doing it that way. So we prefer it that way. But going back to your question, what that means is when we've finished an album, we are so close to it, it's here, because we've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours staring at every last detail, that we can listen to it, but we can only listen to it sort of analysing it, and then we have to stop after a point and pretty much just not listen to it at all anymore. We play some of the songs live, of course, but don't listen to the recorded version. And then maybe a year or so, couple of years.
Take the time.
Yeah. So yeah, if I listen to stuff from 10 years ago now, I can just appreciate it. And we're starting to get to that point with the last album we did. We're not quite there yet, but it's starting to be enjoyable to hear it, I think this kind of thing is weirdly current, actually, because obviously not that long ago, in the past few weeks, there was some really horrific violence in America, and the president comes out and blames video games. I think he blamed for it, and okay, for once it wasn't music, but it's the same fucking argument. We've heard it. People who listen to this music have heard it before. I remember years ago Iron Maiden were banned from the whole of the country of Chile because they mentioned the devil in a song or something like that. And I think it's a complicated relationship between violence and music for people who listen to and play this kind of stuff. Because I'm not sure what's going on. It's somehow satisfying and somehow a release to be confronted with the violence in music that sounds like ours. I mean, we're not the only ones, but we're certainly one of the more violent ones. But at the same time, I don't want to hurt anyone. But I'm obsessed with the idea of the things that hurt people. So yeah, I'm not sure how all that works out psychologically, and as someone who just listens to it, who isn't making that music themselves, it's kind of the same, I think. Sometimes the state of my head gets so bad that the only thing that I can listen to that feels like a release, that feels like it's doing what's in my head already, is stuff that's way more violent than any metal music. That's why I like Masonna, for example. Do you know? It's a Japanese noise artist, but it you can't describe what it sounds like. It's the most incomprehensibly aggressive thing. There's no music, no melody. It's just all the time. Sometimes that's the only thing that can make me feel better. But at the same time, I don't think that guy has ever killed anyone or even wants to. So I'm not sure what the answer is. I just know that it feels satisfying to be exposed to it. Yeah, the phrase they use, especially in American English, is well adjusted. It's more well adjusted, and I think maybe it's because it's you understand that certain negative things are part of the world, and you're not trying to pretend that they're not there. And I think a lot of that creeps it. Certainly modern culture. Have a nice day. That's like, it doesn't acknowledge that maybe you're having a shit day. And I think understanding that some of the people who are interested in psychopaths, mind hunters on Netflix and so on, sometimes they're like really creepy nerds, but that's always going to be the case. Those people exist. But I think a lot of the time it's an acknowledgement that these things are in the world that allows you to function in the world more authentically. And this is getting a bit sort of philosophical and pompous sounding, but I think there's something to that, rather than trying to ignore the negative.
I understand.
That's why in my living room at home, I have a framed photo, like poster, but in a frame, of the Goya painting. It's Saturn devouring his children. And if you saw a picture of it, I mean, obviously not everyone knows what that looks like, but if you Google it, if you look at the expression on his face, it's total horror. There is nothing fun about this painting at all. And there's another painting that's of Ivan the Terrible in a certain Ivan Grozny, I believe the painting's called, and it's got the same kind of look on his face. There you go. Yeah. And it's total horror. It's awful. It's the evil character in it is terrified. But you have to understand that that's in here just as much as puppies and kittens and pretty flowers and things. And I think if you can balance those things, then you can live in the world better a little. That was about a 15-minute answer to a really simple question, sorry. Yeah, I mean, the reason that they wanted 3 was because that's just what record labels like. They like to promote things, and so you can have one well in advance, and then you're going to have one in a bit of a build-up, and then you have one at the time when the album comes out. Pardon me. And the one for New Bethlehem, it's not really much of a video. It's got some artwork, and it's just the song, to introduce the song to people. The one for Forward is a lyric video, which is quite unusual for us.
Yes.
We don't release lyrics to songs, but it's just to fuck with the idea a little bit. Okay, yeah, you know what we're gonna do that. Who cares? Do it differently. And also, I'm quite proud of the lyrical perspective on that song. It's quite powerful because to me, it's got a lot to do with, because it relates to the First World War, and the idea of informed consent is part of it as well. I don't think it's possible for the soldiers who were in the First World War to have consented to what was going to happen to them. You can't consent to that because what happened to them had never happened before. That's part of the meaning of the album, A New Kind of Horror. That's part of the reason for it. That war was a new kind of horror because it hadn't happened before. And it seemed important to me to recognise the experiences that these people would have had compared to their experience in war. And that's the way that the chorus and the verses work. So that the verses are the lives that they understood, the lives that they lived, the lives that are the same as our lives, and then the chorus is the war part. And it seemed worth opening that up to people to see what they thought of it, And then Obscene as Cancer, again, it's got the First World War theme with it, but the lyrics are mostly based on poetry written during the war by soldiers, and with that one I gave like a list of ideas and things that I thought should be in there, things that I thought should not be in there, and we gave that to the filmmakers, and then it's their baby. It's up to them to do what they want to do. So we see that almost like anyone out there has seen it. We didn't make it, they made it, and then they send it to us and go, there you go. But I'm actually really pleased with how it turned out. And I showed it to my mum, and like she almost cried and went, that's amazing. And that's all the review I need, personally. I'm really happy with how it came out. I think it's really powerful. So. Yes, I feel enormously concerned about it. There's this weird debate that started in the last few weeks about whether Greta Thunberg is some kind of saint or if she's being manipulated by other people or something like that. And I'm pretty much on the saint side of things. When I was a little kid, my mum was always a member of Friends of the Earth, which in the UK that's an organisation that's always been trying to campaign against this kind of problem. And so some of my early memories of being out and meeting other people was when she was volunteering at Friends of the Earth and had to take me along. So my whole life it's made sense to me to understand that we're only on what's actually a much smaller ball of dirt than it seems. And also there's this weird thing. If you support something, look at the other people who support it and decide whether you think they're the same kind of people you want to agree with. And it can teach you something sometimes. So, I mean, obviously in the UK, Brexit is a big thing. And I would say to people there, okay, look at the people leading the campaign for Brexit and look at the people leading the campaign against Brexit. Who do you think is a good human being and who's an asshole? And obviously it's a lot more complicated than that, and people should inform themselves a lot better, but that's going to give you a clue. And half of those Brexit guys, I think it should be illegal for them ever to be happy ever. Just looking at them, there's something wrong with it. And it's a little bit the case with the climate change stuff. Who are the people so concentrating again on Greta Thunberg, this poor girl who's like 16, but who are the people who are being horrible about her? Look at them and do you think they should be in charge of the world? And usually the answer's no. So yeah, take your cue from there and then try and figure out the facts, you know. I'm not sure that is really fair. It seems that way. It seems that Napalm Death have influenced people in a positive direction because you agree with what it is that they're saying. Surely it's probably not the case that you think Burzum has influenced people in a positive direction.
I know.
But that's part of extreme music too. So yeah, people are influencing people in all sorts of directions all of the time, and some of it seems right. But I'm not convinced that it necessarily is right. So I suppose the ultimate question is all of this extreme music stuff a force for good in the world? And I don't think it necessarily is. It would be easy to go along with what we were talking about earlier, the more well-adjusted people, the psychological benefits of understanding there are negatives in the world. But I think, although that's an important thing to understand, it's still too simplistic. And I'm sure that there are people out there who, for example, right, there's a band called Nagaroth, right? And they're always seen as like kind of Nazi leaning, maybe. Not quite as bad as bands like Absurd and Screwdriver and stuff, but there's a bit of that. And I ended up doing a show with Nagaroth. And I personally am quite politically engaged. I'm not a member of. Think that Barney from Napalm probably does loads of stuff. I don't really, but I pay attention to stuff. And yeah, I agree more with Greta Thunberg than I do with Donald Trump. But I'm not a political ideologue. But there I am backstage with this guy from this band who supposedly have this kind of Nazi following, and I couldn't help myself but speak to him about it. And it turns out, from speaking to him, I'm not going to give the details of what he said, but it turns out I had really the wrong idea about the guy, and maybe some people out there have the wrong idea about the guy, and it's not necessarily as simple as agree with him or don't. There are reasons why he does what he and so on and so on. Ultimately, everything is really more complicated than easy categories. And yeah, I don't think extreme music is necessarily a good influence on the world, but that doesn't mean it's a bad influence either. It is what it is. We are where we are. That's all you can say, I think. Yeah, thanks. That's the only thing I could say to anyone. Thank you for giving a shit, and I hope people you love don't die prematurely. That's about it's about all I can say. Yeah, but yeah, thanks for the support. It does actually mean a lot, even though I'm continually mystified by it. But yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much.
That's all right.
Mad